In this video, we show how to properly deploy DB Reorg, which plays a vital part in keeping your system healthy. We will configure the utility using the ini file, looking specifically at the reorg section. We'll also configure the reorg process itself using the UI criteria in the settings menu. Then we'll execute DB Reorg in batch mode. First, let's establish some context. We're working in a Linux system. We need to figure out who the current user is and then navigate to the DB Reorg utility directory. This is the user who will be submitting DB Reorg in batch mode. It requires a matching user object in the client. We need to configure the utility using the ini file. We navigate to the end of the file. Near the end, we find the reorg section. It contains the auto reorg setting, which by default is set to 365. If we keep this value, data older than a year will be marked for deletion, irrespective of the criteria. In certain cases, you may want to increase the value for the data you wish to retain. We also need to set the no archive check setting to 1, where the reorg is basically disabled, irrespective of the frequency of execution of DB Reorg. If you want it to work, you must set this value to 1. The submission of the utility in batch mode requires a command line instruction. This is submitted by the user that is currently logged in. The user that submits the command in batch mode must have a matching user object in the system, so we create the object on the appropriate clients. Note that authorizations and privileges are not required, the department is irrelevant, and matching is not case sensitive. Let's start the utility user interface. We do this every time we need to adjust the volume of data flagged for removal. We set the retention period in days for each table. This is just like logging into AWI. We provide the clients, since DB Reorg is client specific, and then name and passwords. As soon as we're logged in, we notice the 5 tables and the current number of records that can be flagged for removal based on existing settings. We also notice the criteria, which we're about to adjust. Here we should enable the reorg for every table, including object audit, even if we don't use the revision reports. In the future, someone else may enable it while being unaware of the reorg requirements. Enabling reorg won't hurt, and it might save you a lot of work if the revision report utility is ever enabled. For each table, we can make adjustments on the type of data that we want to remove, say read versus unread messages, as well as the retention history in days. For statistics, you can set the volume of overall statistical data, basically the total number of executions, as well as the number of executions per object. Here, we recommend caution. You should keep a bit more because this data can be valuable. On the other hand, we don't recommend keeping a large volume of reports or reports per executed task. They consume a considerable amount of table space and are not particularly useful, especially when tasks complete successfully. We're not going to go through every table, but it should be clear that they should all be configured. We need to save the settings. Remember these two functions. Forecast will produce a forecast of the records about to be marked for deletion, and you have the option of unmarking records by resetting deletion flags. Let's use an example. Notice this number. The number we just pointed out is the number of records about to be flagged for deletion. It's the difference between the current number of messages and the number resulting from the flagging. Let's look at the variable UC_utility_reorg, which shows the criteria we just configured. Criteria can be set and adjusted in the UI, but it's also entirely possible to set the values in this variable. We've reached the point where DB Reorg has been enabled and configured. All we need to do is execute the reorg in batch mode on the command line. Of course, this command can be incorporated in a scheduled task, which is recommended by our service teams. DB Reorg should be part of your automated daily maintenance. The current user was able to execute the utility because we have a matching user object defined earlier in AWI.